For those who seek adventure, this is the Buffalo Roamer Podcast, sharing the people, places, and moments that make a life on the loose worth living.
The thing that's going to stick out to you most is when they open up that plane door. The cold is something like you've never felt.
The jungle's so thick, even if you had a machete, you couldn't get through it.
There's a huge blonde grizzly bear. And when it saw us, this thing put its head down, stomped on the ground, and hissed like an alligator.
I just crossed this brutal stretch of desert, and I was really suffering.
I'm your host, Will Collins. I'm an adventurer, outdoorsman, and roamer of wild places. I've backpacked the Brooks Range, rafted the Grand Canyon, and have canoed from source to sea, both the Mississippi and Yukon rivers. I live for adventure, travel, fresh air, and diving into the unknown. And now, I hope to share my passion with you on the Buffalo Roamer Podcast. Here we go, episode 82. Thanks for tuning in yet again. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe and share the podcast with a friend. That can really help the show to grow. Today's podcast is brought to you by SRE Outdoors, family-owned and operated outdoor gear shop in Black River Falls, Wisconsin. Use code WILL at SRE Gear for 10% off your first order. All the best gear, all the best prices, great customer service. Also brought to you by Fischel Paddles, makers of fine handcrafted wooden canoe paddles, FISHELL, paddles.com, and use the code WILL at checkout for a free paddle hanger. Okay, today's podcast is Matt Mason is on the show. Matt is a thru hiker. He's a Triple Crown holder. He's done the Pacific Crest Trail, the Appalachian Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail. He's a good dude, and I enjoyed talking with him. His buddy, Todd Operdude. Todd, shout out, introduced Matt to the podcast, so thanks, Todd, for hooking us up, and enjoyed talking with Matt. Before we get into it, I do got to let you know that the views and opinions of this guest do not reflect the views or opinions of the United States government, the Department of the Interior, the Department of the Defense, the Department of Agriculture, the National Park Service, the U.S. Forest Service, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Bureau of Land Management, or any private, municipal, county, state, or any firefighting organization. So there you have it. Without further ado, let's get into the podcast with episode 82, Matt Mason on Buffalo Roamer Outdoors. Matt, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing excellent. Winter is not quite settled in here, here in the Midwest. And from what I understand, so where are you at right now? You're in Montana?
Yeah, I'm in Livingston, Montana.
Okay, right on.
And I am not so patiently awaiting for winter to show up here as well.
Okay, a little slow winter there too, huh?
Yeah. I would prefer right now. I think I have more days on my Nordic skis than I do on my snowboard, and usually that's flipped by this time of year at least.
Yeah, maybe a decent sign for Ohio, but for Montana, not the case, right?
Yeah,
that's cool, man. Well, I stoked to catch up with you and chat with you. Sounds like you've been all over the place and done some epic trails and some epic trips. I mean, the AT, the PCT, the CDT, long trail. Man, you've been able to get around a little bit.
Yeah, not bad for an Illinois boy.
That's great, man. How did you get into long distance hiking and backpacking and through hiking? And so you're from Freeport, Illinois too, right?
Yeah, I was born and raised in the city of Chicago and grew up in Freeport, Illinois, small rural community, Northwest Illinois. Yeah, we're neighbors by Montana standards.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. But my best friend growing up, his family was super into the being outside, and I just kind of latched on, was always hanging out with them. So I got to tag along on the camping trips, on the hiking trips at various state parks in the area there, and went my first like what I'll call like backcountry trip was with my best friend Jones growing up, and we did a night sleeping on sandbars on the Wisconsin River, which I know you know well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was in 8th grade. I grew up going to a summer camp, a little YMCA summer camp in Northwest Illinois, Camp Benson. and went on a trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And those were the first like real mountains I saw, as a Midwest kid, right? And bumped into an Appalachian Trail hiker, and was just kind of marveled about the whole thing, and decided that that's what I want to do when I grow up. Yeah.
That's sick, man. And so the AT was your first big through hike?
Yeah. Actually, that same my friend Jones, growing up, when we were little kids, we got into a fight about that there being a trail that was longer than 100 miles, and we had just been at some local state park, on what I would call more of a path than a trail. And he's like, "No, there's my dad. He was telling me about this trail, the Appalachian Trail." And, we were young, and like his dad literally pulled out an encyclopedia and was like, "No, the Appalachian Trail, it's here. It goes from Georgia to Maine. It's over 2,000 miles. And I think that was like really where it was like, what? And then that trip, I think I was in eighth. That's when it really secured it, when I actually got to see one of those scraggly looking hikers.
That's awesome.
Yeah, graduated. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go for it. But I was going to say, when did you do the AT then? How old were you, or what year did you do it?
2012. I just I graduated college that December, and was December of 2011, and February 29th of 2012, I was standing at Springer Mountain. And I think this year, I'm bad at math, but I think this year is technically will be my third anniversary, because 2024 is a leap year. So kind of excited about that.
Oh, that's funny. The technicalities, huh?
Yeah.
That's sweet, man. And so obviously the AT made quite the impression on you. If you went for the Triple Crown and then plus some.
Yeah. So I think my human odometer of like just continuous long distance hiking is around 9,000 miles. And there's lots of people that have double and triple and quadruple that, but not too bad for having kind of having jobs here and there.
What was, I want to get into some of your jobs too. Firefighting.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, just
grading. But what was it about the AT that got you hooked? And what do you remember from that first trip that was like the kind of, awe-inspiring moment that you were like, oh man, this is the real deal? Oh,
sure. Yeah. I mean, just growing up in the Midwest, once I'd kind of heard about it through my friends, like, whoa, this existed. It became this magnificent, big pie in the sky kind of dream. Right. But little did I know, like, there were other long distance trails, right? So in my eyes, it's just this one path, right? And I'd read all kinds of books in high school, all these self-published memoirs, and, of course, A Walk in the Woods. I'd read all those. I like to say that I was almost too prepared. Like I knew too much about every little tradition, right? Sure. In this place you can get pizza, and this place you can, there wasn't, I'd already left no stone unturned, even though I'd only stepped foot on the trail maybe a handful of miles before I actually completed or started hiking, just various trips over the years. But yeah, I think that just like the history there on that trail, the long trail is actually the first recreational long distance backpacking trip that was conceived, and that runs from the Massachusetts border all the way north through to the Canadian border through the state of Vermont. But all that history is just tied up too. I'm sorry.
Said I've heard that one's epic too. The long trail. Yeah.
I mean, it's great. The long trail. The Long Trail and the Appalachian Trail share about 90 miles together in southern Vermont. But it isn't until you get to northern Vermont where the quote unquote real hiking begins. That's some of the the most technical, rocky, rooty, wet hiking. And when I hiked the long trail, we actually went from Canada to Massachusetts, going southbound, and with my friends that I was going with, who we'd met on the Appalachian Trail the year prior, because of some jobs and whatnot. We started mid October, so we were above tree line with a foot of snow, and there I am in my like little blue running shorts. Like, this is okay.
So funny.
So,
Yeah, dude. That's awesome. I'll never forget. I was I went to college in Colorado, and in California, I went on a spring break trip, like a backpacking trip to Yosemite. And it was like a low snow year in Colorado, really low snow year. And it was in the, in March. And so we were in Colorado, and we're like, oh, if there's no snow in Colorado, it's California, like it's going to be like a beach, And so we go out planning this whole route in Yosemite, and we show up, and like they had a massive snow year. Like, we didn't even realize that it's like legitimate mountains, like in Colorado. And we show up, the whole route is like, 12 feet under snow. And we're like, okay, I guess we're going to have to make a change of plans here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that's super common for long distance hikers that have never spent time in the mountains in the Southeast. As a Midwest kid looking at Georgia, I didn't realize like how cold it was going to be. And like, it doesn't take a lot of research. It was like, oh, some of the lows are like in the 20s in March. Okay. And yeah, I would much rather take 5 degrees out here in Montana with low humidity than 20 degrees in North Georgia or North Carolina with all that humidity, because it really is like a biting cold.
How do the AT, PCT, and it's the AT, the Pacific Coast, the PCT, Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail, CDT, that make up the so-called Triple Crown, right?
Yeah.
And how do those compare?
Yeah, there's lots of like metrics and like kind of catchphrases people kind of say, but like just very generally, it's most common for people to hike the Appalachian Trail first, because at one point in time it was the most popular in like just like household name popularity. The Pacific Crest Trail, was like just didn't have that name recognition, even though for some folks like it could have been it's in their home state and they might know about the AT but not even know about the Pacific Crest Trail. I mean, California is a massive state, right? So, the similarities, they're all long distance trails. They're more or less all continuous. There's road walks on all 3 of them, some of them shorter, some of them longer. I would say the Appalachian Trail is the easiest in the sense of navigation, right? Like if you have a head on your shoulders, you could even do it without a guidebook if you really wanted to. There's signs everywhere. There's ample water. There's of course some tricky spots, but it's pretty dialed on that. There's a huge infrastructure around the trail. So like when you go into towns, people know who the people with the backpacks are,
right.
Like there's a small economy based around the couple months that the bubble of long distance hikers are passing through towns. And then the Pacific Crest Trail, that is kind of like, it is, in my very, very humble opinion, it's the easiest because it's the trail tread. I used to dig trail for a living. The trail tread and how it was designed and at the grades it was designed is perfect.
Wow.
There's not a route that crosses that thing. It is like I joke that it's just pea gravel from Mexico to Canada. It's
That's
just,
interesting. That's funny.
of course, there's technical
Yeah.
stuff in there, but the climbs are very graded. The public land corridor on the Appalachian Trail, when they were constructing it, was a lot more narrow. And it's so old that they just used to build trails straight up, straight down, or at grades we wouldn't build a trail today. Because when you build a really steep trail, it essentially becomes a water slide and erodes your trail faster, and is less enjoyable to hike.
Yeah.
And then the Continental Divide Trail, is much more of more wild than the two other trails. Not to say that it doesn't have like really, there's some world class hiking trails, like trail that it's on, but that's definitely longer water carriers, less infrastructure. The only time I've ever gotten signs of hypothermia ever was in the Never Summer Wilderness in northern Colorado in early August. It's brutal. And then literally less than a week later, I was in the Great Divide Basin in Wyoming, and it was like 100 degrees, and I was drinking hot water from my water bottles.
What's the general route of the Continental Divide Trail? Obviously, the Continental Divide, and you can think about it like on a map, but I couldn't tell you like exactly where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all long distance trails have a terminus. What some of them are, So I hiked it northbound. So I started down in New Mexico. There's the boot heel of New Mexico. There's actually a section of the border of the U.S.-Mexico border that runs north-south. So it starts there and meanders all the way, kind of jumping sky islands, these awesome mountain ranges through New Mexico, and weaves its way up to the San Juans in southwest Colorado. And from there, jumps on to the Colorado Trail and works its way across Colorado, then kind of diagonal through Wyoming there. And the official route then kind of follows the border of Idaho and Montana before ultimately catching the Bob Marshall Wilderness and Glacier Park to Canada.
Sounds like some gnarly
it's when they, it really is. And one of my favorite things about the Continental Divide Trail is there historically has been a culture of like choose your own adventure. So, there can be, from town A to town B, there can be 4 different routes you can go and you can cut between them. So what's awesome is, it's likely that there aren't too many people that have hiked the exact same Continental Divide Trail, but I still walked from Mexico to Canada.
Right.
I just had
that's partly because the trail systems are just so good that you can link up with different trails at different portions in the West there.
No, well, some of that was out of necessity. Is some of these, the Continental Divide Trail has seen a lot more numbers than it has even 10 years ago. And with the beauty, the blessing and the curse that is the smartphone, right? That like all the maps can be at your fingertips. People have decided, I can link this Forest Service road to this trail to a little, cross country. And then there's just less, the Continental Divide Trail hasn't been as developed as other ones in there. I think there is a continuous linked path now, but some of that is like it's on roads. Like when you're going through Grants, just south of Grants, New Mexico, you walk on this highway without a shoulder and I did because I'm a crazy person and said I just wanted to walk from Mexico to Canada that summer. But you're walking through two different parcels of public lands on the side of this highway, on either side of the highway. And it's just like, oh, in like 20 years, there'll be a wonderful trail built right over there. But until then, tick, 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 just me and my trekking poles walking against traffic.
That's funny.
But that is something that I really, really enjoyed about that trip, was just the choose your own adventure, and, having a couple different data sets to look at to see what other folks have done. And I mean, there are places where on that trail, the trail's so overgrown where it may only exist on maps. And, I remember looking out on my paper map, a different map on my phone from a different data set. And I was like, oh, I'm on the trail. And I could just look around and it was just a sea of sage.
That's
and
funny.
I was like, well, I'll just keep going north up this valley because that's what the map says I should do.
Follow the map, I guess.
Yep. And it was just fine. So there's definitely, it's not to say that people couldn't have their first long distance hike be the Continental Divide, but it's definitely a more advanced route.
What is it about long distance hiking in general that you love?
I just love the idea of I have this little backpack with food and water, 5 days, and whatever comes my way, I got it handled. There's just a real freedom that I find that just so alluring, and it's a very romantic idea. Like, just there you go.
Totally.
It's not to say that there aren't ups and downs. It's like it's not all literally, world-class views and like great trail, and the monotony of walking across the country sets in. That real freedom that you have.
I know what you mean.
I love it.
I know what you mean. I feel the exact same thing. When I'm going on a canoe trip, it's like, every time I go on a trip, especially if I'm guiding and taking other people, it's like, I'm so stressed about like packing, making sure I got everything, making sure I got enough food, making sure I got this, that, are all the logistics taken care of. And then as soon as we have all the boats loaded and you push off, just like that moment of pushing off. And it's just like, all right, we got everything we need. And even if we don't have it, it doesn't matter. There's nothing we can do now. We're floating down river. We're going to have the time of our lives for the next, 5, 10, 3, 5, 10 days, whatever it is, 100 days. And we got everything we need. We don't need anything else. It's the best, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I hiked the Continental Divide Trail, there's a couple of places that have just a general store and a post office, or just someone that's kind enough in the community that accepts packages for long distance hikers. It was in Pie Town, New Mexico, and I get there and ship my box, and it wasn't there. And I checked the tracking. I was like, "Oh, it's been delivered." I'm on the phone. And this is a place that has 3 pie shops, but no grocery stores. Pie Town. And I was like, "But it's delivered." I'm on the phone. The UPS store in Bozeman, Montana got a little confused and sent 2 of the same 2 boxes to the same location. And there's no grocery store.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, there's no grocery store. So, it's those moments that like you can't replicate that, right? And
totally.
What did I do? Hitched 80 miles to the nearest gas station in Arizona and bought 120 miles worth of food at the gas station and just figured it out.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
And the best part is like, on my end, like, especially on a long distance hike, you don't have like generally immediate deadlines, so it's like, we'll just go with the punches. We'll just
totally
hitch way out of my way. Like, we'll just go for it, So there is something that I just love about that. Whereas like, you're never going to really get to experience that on a shorter 5-day trip. And it's not to say that, like, I mean, I love walking with my backpack on and moving through the landscape. I mean, I love it. So whether it's a through hike, whether it's just an overnight to, hey, I wonder if we could walk up there, you know, to route finding, whatever. I enjoy it. But there is something special on those longer trips where you run into those things that are my favorite.
What kind of style are you doing these trips in? Because everyone has their own style, right? You got your what fastest known time? Is that what it is? FKTs?
Dude, one of the reasons why I enjoy your podcast is because it is adjacent to like the recreating that I do. So there's lots of crossover, but then like then I love that you're like, oh, what's that thing? Fastest known. I love it, dude. I love it. Yeah. So fastest known time, right?
Like,
it's whoever.
I wanted to say FTD. I was like, fastest known descent known, fastest known time. That's right.
Yeah. So FKTs, no, I'm in no danger of taking anyone's FKT. The no danger. But I really enjoy traveling light, traveling fast and efficient. But I am not. I'm not going to be hiking 55 miles a day. That's just you won't see me on any leaderboards.
So are you? Where do you lie on the spectrum? Okay, so you're not going for any new records, but you said you like traveling light. Are you like shaving your toothbrush? Are you?
Oh yeah. Okay. I'm a full on ultralight jerk.
Okay, sweet.
But I look at that. When I think about lightweight backpacking, you know, it's really important to me because it's less stress on my body. So sure. Less stress means more miles per day. And when I come back, I immediately start thinking about freedom, right? If I just have less stuff with me, I can go farther. It's less cumbersome when there's been times I've been on public transportation with my little backpack and it just like sits on my lap and it's not in anyone's way, you know?
Yeah.
Like, of course I stick out like a sore thumb with my like women's running shorts on and like, bronze tan, like even my Irish ass. Yeah, if this Irish boy gets into the desert, I even tan a little. I'm sorry. Are we allowed to swear on this show?
Oh yeah, let her fly.
Okay, cool.
Hell yeah.
For a firefighter, I've actually had a pretty decent mouth, so haven't said anything too naughty.
No, not even close. Speaking of firefighting, how did you get into the firefighting, and how long have you been doing that? Wildland firefighting, right? I work here in the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem as a federal wildland firefighter, and of course, it all harkens back to long distance trails. I worked a trail crew job in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, teaching people how to build trails. And the reason why I was doing that job is because I walked some trails and I needed to give back to the to the trail network, like wherever it may be. And it was awesome. I got to work with people from all different walks of life and teach them how to, some folks that had never used a pair of loppers to, trim trees. And I got to help volunteers paint blazes on the trails to actually mark the Appalachian Trail. And that led to my first job working for the National Park Service and on a trail crew. And then, the summer of 2017, I went and got picked up. I'm going to cut you off before I even get to the firefighting stuff. The trail crew work, man, that looks like some backbreaking, but like crew, probably similar to the wildlife, probably to the firefighting, very similar, but like crew building work. What was building trail like, or what is building trail like?
Oh, I think now in 2024, more and more people are saying they get satisfaction from building something with their hands,
Totally.
Right? Like we're always touching screens. We're always doing, whatever. And of course, it's not that people aren't making stuff, doing things, but there's that seeing something, right? I'm like waking up with the same people for a week and walking down the same little stretch of trail and watch as, a group of, at one point, strangers, now friends, just walked down the trail and started opening the trail corridor up, right?
And so what generally, how does it go? Are you like maintaining or improving a trail that currently exists, and you're like taking out roots and big rocks and...
Yeah. So, I've done both trail construction, which I like on like when I was the trail crew leader, we're generally doing trail maintenance. So that is just, there's actually specs for national scenic trails. They have to be so many feet wide, so many feet tall. And in that case, actually, where we were working in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which they allow some horse access to connect different horse trails. So the corridor was as like 8 feet tall. So there are times where we'd be like, okay, just keep reading. Who's the tallest? Who's the tallest person here this week? Like, give them the longest loppers, and and then the enemy of every.
You have to clear it all the way to 8 feet. I see.
Yeah. And then the enemy of all trails is actually water, because water will just wash them away. So then we will be digging water bars or grade reversals, and those are the humps you'll see on like sloped trail, and it's just a gutter. It's using the already hardened dirt soil and just to redirect it and have it kick out into the woods. Because then what happens is the water will wear down the trail and it'll get a nice like U shape, and then the water can never escape, and then it just is going to keep digging that deeper and deeper. And that's not, hikers don't like to hike in that. And so, yeah, and it's great. We're teaching folks that some folks have never used tools before. And there they are in the middle of one of the most remote places on the East Coast digging trails. So it was a great experience.
Hey, it's Will here. Want to take a moment to let you know about today's sponsor, SREgear.com. SRE Gear is a family-owned and operated outdoor gear shop in Black River Falls, Wisconsin, and they have everything you need for your next adventure. Whether you're camping, backpacking, hiking, paddling, or just getting out there and exploring, SREgear.com has the gear you need to get you to those places you love. I recently picked up a new Garmin InReach from SRE. I needed a new communication device for the guided canoe trips I've been leading, and after talking through a few options with the owner, Nick, there, he helped me sort out what I needed and get squared away. And that's one of the things that sets SREgear.com apart is the unbeatable customer service. Call or email with any questions, and you'll talk with the owner, Nick, or someone there close to him. So before you go and buy any outdoor equipment from a big box store, be sure to check out family-owned and operated SREgear.com, and be sure to use the discount code WILL at checkout for 10% off your first purchase. That's discount code WILL at checkout for 10% off. SREgear.com. Great gear, great prices, unbeatable customer service. Hey, it's Will here. I want to take a moment to let you know about our show sponsor and partner, Fischel Paddles, makers of fine, handcrafted wooden canoe paddles. I spent a lot of time paddling rivers and lakes, and Fischel paddles are the best canoe paddles that I've come across. I use the Ray Special model myself, and I outfit all the guided trips that I run with Fischel paddles too, because I think they're the best. Each paddle is handmade by Greg Fischel at his shop in Flagstaff, Arizona, from a single piece of wood. What I love most is the shape and feel of the paddle. Other than being beautiful and efficient, it puts less strain on your shoulders and arms than a typical paddle would, while actually giving you more control and finesse with each stroke. Plus, the shape of the blade just feels right cutting through the water. All paddles are customizable from the type of wood, whether that's cherry, ash, or maple, to laser engravings, and my favorite, which is the leather strap that Greg pins around the shaft so that it doesn't get beat up as you run along the gunnels prying off or doing the J stroke in the back of the stern there. So go get yourself a Fischel paddle now and feel the difference. Use the code WILL at checkout. That's WILL to get a free wooden paddle hanger with any paddle purchase. That way you can show off and organize that new handmade paddle. Check them out at FischelPaddles.com. That's FISHELL paddles.com. Fischel Paddles, handcrafted wooden canoe paddles. I imagine the wildland firefighting and the trail crews are similar and just, tripping and being in the woods with people in general. Like, one of my favorite things for the Buffalo Roamer trips that I do, the guided trips, or just any trip, is like showing up on day one. Nobody knows each other. Everybody's strangers. Everybody is like a little bit standoffish, trying to feel everybody out. And then by the end of the trip, it's like everybody is like best friends. You're taking numbers. It's just the best.
Absolutely. I mean, just, that spending 24/7 together, like you're going to get that camaraderie. And it's, long distance hiking reminds me so much of trail building, on trail crews and working as a wildland firefighter, and vice versa. It's you're having a shared experience, right? Sometimes it's euphoric, sometimes it's suffering. You're eating the same crummy food. You get the same kind of that camaraderie of the group, those in jokes. And it's all all immersive, both long distance hiking and like the fire crew. It's just like, this is kind of your world for now.
So how does the fire crew go down? Tell me about a typical summer, what would happen, and how big your crew is and what you're doing.
Yeah. So I work on a federal wildland crew of, when fully staffed, will be about 10 people, and we're a helitack crew. So we use a helicopter. And if any of the listeners ever watch any ski movies, we use an A-Star, which is what most of the time you'll see. It's a smaller helicopter, but high performance aircraft for high elevation flying. And because where we are, we have peaks upwards of 12,000 feet, and we also can go anywhere in the U.S. So it helps to have something with a little more performance. But yeah, so we fight fire, just like any other fire crew, but we're also able to do a technique called short haul, where we clip a 150-foot rope to the belly of the ship and to two people with harnesses on, and we can insert for rescue in case someone's injured on the fire line. And we can also use this for like search and rescue, applications outside of fire.
So
it's pretty.
Yeah, it sounds intense. How would like a fire go? Like, for instance, you're hanging out and you're like, all right, guys, we got a call up here in this remote part of the Rockies. Go.
Yeah. So, usually our day's pretty normal. It's very similar to hiking. It's kind of the same thing every day, but you never know what's going to get thrown at you. So we'll work out in the morning. We get paid to work out, which is awesome. I get to go trail running on the clock. So cool. Not too many jobs you get to do that. But yeah, when we get the call, we'll assemble the crew, and whoever is managing the aircraft that day will already pre-programmed, three fire folks. We'll load in the helicopter, fly out. Our dispatch center will have coordinates. Sometimes they're dead on, or sometimes said, someone was over on the 555 road and was looking east on the ridge that goes north-south. They didn't really know. And you get to exactly what that has been given. You're like, there's nothing here. And then, it's pretty interesting when you're flying in the ship. You cannot see the fire, but you'll smell the smoke. And you could be, 1,000 feet above ground level, and you can just smell the smoke, but you can't see any smoke. So, our pilots have to go through rigorous training because of our program's short haul, that rescue technique, putting a human external cargo on so they're dialed, and they've been they've been flying a lot, so they're super familiar. They're decent firefighters themselves, having never actually fought fire with traditional hand tools. They just have a aircraft. And once the fire is located, we'll drop everybody off. We'll set up a 144 gallon bucket, and we'll start hiking into the fire. And fires can be something so simple like one tree on fire, right? Or they can be those 1,000,000-acre fires that we hear about in the West. And most fires are those small couple tree fires, but those don't get the good screen time and make the dramatic photos and video, right? Of like a couple knuckle draggers like myself digging in the dirt, just putting a little line around. It's when homes are on fire, right? And big, whole mountainsides, right? But yeah, it's and we'll just if you can think of.
Yeah. How do you, what are some of the techniques for fighting them?
Yeah. So if you just imagine the way I like to explain is, if you imagine a piece of paper, and that piece of paper is your fire, whether it is, a quarter acre or 100,000 acres, we kind of fight fire the same way. We're going to start kind of the point of origin, and we're just going to start flanking the fire on the right side and the left side, and we're going to construct a hand line. So a hand line is clearing all of the standing brush and debris, like any standing trees. We're going to bring those all to the ground with chainsaws, and then folks behind them will be in there digging hand line down to mineral soil. So what you kind of end up with is essentially a hiking trail. It's kind of looks of, you've got this cleared out area and just a strip of mineral soil there. You slowly go around the sides, and if the fire is only literally 2 or 3 trees on fire, it's very simple and can be done really quickly. And then when you have like our helicopter with putting water buckets, putting buckets of water on it, you can wrap things up pretty quickly. But what's interesting, or I just love, is it scales. So instead of it just being, 4 of us on the ground in one helicopter, it can be multiple 20-person hand crews. And instead of it being, 1 acre, it's 2,000 acres. Instead of 1 aircraft, it's 4 aircraft. And it just keeps kind of scaling.
Just seems so wild.
Put in,
it makes total and complete sense, but it just seems so wild that the way that you end a massive wildfire burning across half of the country is literally just a crew of freaking guys out there busting their ass, freaking digging a trench next to a fire. It just seems so wild.
Yeah, it is. And that is like what I just described is the most basic, the most like textbook kind of. It gets real complicated real quick. Literally well above my pay grade, literally above my pay grade type stuff. Where I am just like one of those little cogs in the system, and just plug and play. But it's a lot of folks put in a lot of sweat, blood, and tears into this. Many of them making, first year firefighters are only making $15 an hour. So it is, there's a lot of folks leaving it as a career, right now, which is unfortunate because we need firefighters. People love firefighters, right? It's, I'm anxious to see what the future has for it. It's hard. There are all different types of crews out there that aren't able to hire enough people because they just those. It's more of like reshuffling the deck than like bringing more people. But who wants to be away from their loved ones all summer long for $15 an hour?
It's an intense job for sure.
Yeah, but so it's one thing that is like hopeful with all of that is there's an advocacy group, grassroots wildland firefighters, that's pushing stuff in Congress right now. The National Federation of Federal Employees, the union that represents me, has been doing a lot of stuff too to like increase these benefits. And it's funny though, like most folks' jobs, they go to their boss, "Hey, I did X, Y, and Z. Can I have a raise?" I have to go through Congress to get one of those. Like it's a little different, and folks love firefighters. Folks love firefighters. Like it's a bipartisan issue, right? But we have folks that get injured at work doing what they were told to do, and then they lose their retirement, right? That's something our union was able to get a law passed to make sure that if you get injured on the job, that you get to keep your retirement. That's a fair shake. In my eyes. So
I would think so.
There's a lot of stuff going on with that. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's it seems like a wild career in ways. Jumping out of a helicopter to go fight a fire.
Well, we don't jump out. That's we don't jump out.
Okay.
It's like a static system, so we're like clipped in.
Okay, so you're James Bond in it from the helicopter.
Yeah, sure.
No, not that badass. I don't jump. We just rappel.
It's static. We don't rappel. So, but those people do rappel out of helicopters, not us, or not my job. And then people jump out of airplanes for the federal government to go to work, which is a pretty wild thing.
And so when you're saying it's static, you land the plane and hop out.
So we land the helicopter, we set up our rope, and depending on how it is configured, we either hook up while we're on the ground, or the helicopter will fly to us. They will dangle the rope in front of us, and then we clip in and get plucked out.
I see.
It's Parks Canada, which is like what they call national parks in Canada, and Europe have been using this technique called short haul for several decades. There hasn't been a known fatality associated with this because of there not being anything that is actually moving in the system. Whereas there have been folks rappelling out of helicopters that have died, and it's smoke jumpers that are jumping out of airplanes, deploying a parachute. There's a lot of risks associated with that.
How about all your time spent in the wilds? Is there any wildlife encounter that comes to mind? Any interesting wildlife you've seen?
This is actually not the story that you'll think it is. It just makes me laugh every time. In the fall of 2022, I hiked the Superior hiking trail, which goes from the Wisconsin border all along in Minnesota, all along the coast of Lake Superior. I mean, not on the coast, but it's sure. The Lake Superior is omnipresent. Beautiful trail, and like being a kid from the Midwest, I was so stoked. Oh, I get to go hike in the Midwest and like do something more than just like a couple hours. This is awesome. And not just be, going in circles. But I can't remember where I was, somewhere outside of Two Harbors, Minnesota. And I was night hiking, looking because there's designated campsites, which is really nice. Like you just, every couple of miles, there's another place to camp. And I'm walking and got my headlamp on, and I look and I see these two pair of eyes reflecting back at me. And then my Montana brain immediately reaches for my bear spray, which doesn't exist because I left that in Montana because I'm not in grizzly country. I was like, oh, it's just a white-tailed deer. Oh, perfect. Great.
Just a good
Like,
old whitetail.
yeah. Once you spend enough time in grizzly country, you know, there is a level of edge that I'm like kind of always on.
I
'Cause
remember
I'm not trying to mess with.
on the Mississippi, I hadn't spent too much time in the South before. And so canoeing the Mississippi, I think I might have been in Mississippi, and I was camping one night on a sandbar on the edge of the river, and I kept hearing rustling like right along the edge of my tent. And it sounded kind of big, and I had no idea what it was. And I heard it for like all day almost, and all through the night. Could not figure out what it was. And then I opened up my tent, and I like caught a glimpse of it, and it was an armadillo. I was like, boy, I'm in the South now. Freaking armadillo. Never seen one of those before. I'm sure everybody in the South is like, what the hell is this Yankee talking about?
That is amazing. Yeah. But I think I know I've told this story elsewhere, but it's worth a retell. The wildlife encounter that I had that's probably the most memorable is I hiked in 2014. I hiked the Colorado Trail, which goes from like West Denver to Durango, and we were up at Monarch Pass, and we just went in and out of town really quick. And I just was like wanted to charge my phone a little more. So there's some sort of restaurant there, kind of like tourist attraction thing, and I just long distance hikers and probably any long distance person in these times is good at finding outlets. I'm sure you were able to find outlets on your Mississippi trip. Like you just like, oh, there's an outlet under that table. I just know there is, and boop.
Right?
Yeah, we know there's these skills, and so I'm plugging in, I'm charging, and we're losing daylight, and we knew it was going to be a full moon. In this area, the trail is all above tree line, and when it is ducks in the trees, they're very sparse. So you just have this beautiful moonlight. And so my buddy JC, him and I have hiked almost 3,000 miles together. One of my dear friends, and he goes up ahead. He's like, "Hey man, I'll leave. I'll go pitch my tent. You know, when I find a spot, whatever." And we have this little system where we leave our poles on the trail, and then you go find your buddy. So I get all charged up, and I'm walking. I've got my headlamp on my head, but full moon, so it's dark, and I literally have a moon shadow. I'm walking, and I just kind of have this uncomfortable, like feeling like I'm being watched. Something's watched. Oh, this isn't right. And I'm like, whatever, dude, bro, chill. There's nothing out here. You're fine. Just walking along, and before I know, I'm like, okay, no. I throw my headlamp on. I look up the slope. Nothing. I look down the slope, and I just see these two green emerald forward-facing eyes. And I was just like,
Emerald.
Hey, bear, get out of here. Fuck you, bear. Get out of here. It wasn't really interested, and I was just like, okay, I've got the uphill advantage, right? And I sheepishly just kind of like kick some dirt, and it's far enough where I can't see its silhouette. It's just the two eyes. I'm like, bear, and I just start yelling, and okay, it's not moving. So I turn my headlamp off and keep walking, like it didn't care, And there I just immediately turn my head to the side, look down the slope, hit the light, and it's right there.
Oh, geez.
And I was just like, what the? And I'm like, and this time I'd pick a real rock up, pick some gravel up, try to hit it with the rock, try to hit it with the shotgun gravel. And, it's just like not really doing much. I was just like, what the hell? Like this thing's following me. I was like, only a mountain lion follows, like bears don't follow people. And I was like, oh shit. What do you do when you see a mountain lion? Like what's, and I was like, okay. And then I was like, no, it's a black bear. It's a black bear. And I was like, we're just going black bear protocol. Fuck you, bear. And I just take a huge rock and launch it, like down. And this one got real close. And the way those eyes zigged and zagged, that was cat-like is the only way to describe it. And I'm just like, immediately my heart is just pounding. And I was like, get out of here, and just make all this noise. And I pick another rock, throw it, and its eyes, slowly illuminated, became like a half moon, just like a crescent moon shape, and into the night.
Jeez.
And then I'm just like, what the fuck do I do now?
Right?
I don't. At least I knew where it was. And it's like, okay.
Just pucker
So
up and try to
turn my headlamp. Yeah. I just turn my headlamp on, and I'm just gonna, this time we'll just keep the headlamp on. With the romantic night hiking under moonlight is done. And I'm just walking, and my heart is just pounding. I'm walking, and all of a sudden I see my buddy's trekking poles on the side of the trail, like I have literally hundreds of times in the nights that we've camped together. And I jumped back and let out like I was going to fight this inanimate object.
On edge.
I was just I was on edge, and I just hear like, dude, you okay? What's going on? He comes huffing and puffing, and
that sounds like a memorable one.
Yeah, and that actually the Continental Divide, that was also on the Continental Divide Trail technically, because that's where those two trails overlapped. But yeah,
cats are shifty, man, huh?
Yeah. And they're a powerful creature. Very, very impressive. I'm glad it didn't want anything to do with me.
What I saw on your little list you sent me on some of the trips that you did a bike packing route in the driftless.
Oh yeah. So yeah, like all of my adventures, I've been trying to make them just a little more complicated or interesting or different, whatever they are. So I'd done a bunch of long distance hiking, and trails I'm sure we won't even cover because some of them aren't worth covering, frankly. It's just walking, man. It's just walking. So I was, those routes, even with the CDT, of course, that's cool. You get to choose your own adventure, but you're still kind of in this confine of the divide, right? And with this, I actually, the fall of 2021, I did a 500-mile loop through Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa, and back to my mom's house, in where I started in Illinois, on a bike. Yeah, on a bike. And so it's a gravel bike, so it looks like a normal road bike, but it has a little bit wider tires, and it had, again, as being someone that's very serious about carrying less gear so I can move faster. It's pared down. It's not the big like panniers you see on the sides of the wheels and like lots of stuff. It's pretty agile. What was so great about that is I thought the Continental Divide Trail is like kind of choose your own adventure. This was literally make up your own adventure. So I spent about a week and a half after the fire season, just like looking at, all different types of mapping resources. Like there's gravelmaps.com is a place where anyone can just say, hey, this is a gravel road, and you can draw a segment on there. And then I was cross-referencing that with like Google Earth and like Gaia and Strava and all of these different like things. And I just made this route that was predominantly gravel roads, or in the Midwest, they're very lucky, lots of rails trails. So I got to ride on rails trails a lot through northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin. It was awesome. It was delightful. That trip was I kind of tend to just go all in onto things. And anytime I've talked to other like people that have done bike touring or bike packing, they're like, wait. Your first trip was a trip that you made up yourself. It was 500 miles and at the late fall, early winter. And I was like, yeah, ignorance is bliss here. Didn't know. Didn't know. It was 9 days. And and some of those days were kind of, my grandmother lives in Madison, Wisconsin. So I just biked from my mom's house to my grandma's house, which was 60 days. And then I went and met a buddy and at his place near Baraboo, Wisconsin. So like some of the days were like much shorter than I would have liked, but I wanted to see if it was so cool. It's choose your own adventure. But one of my favorite nights there was in, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the town in Iowa, but Iowa's pretty well known in the gravel biking world. It has more gravel roads than any other state. And so there's just awesome gravel, and why folks like gravel biking is because there's not a lot of cars. And when there are, there's just less traffic, because when a vehicle's blowing past someone on a bike at 70 miles per hour and only there's a foot of clearance, that's pretty scary. As someone on a bike, I know that I'm not going to live. But one of my favorite nights there, I like to push the boundaries of where can we sleep tonight. And I won't say the town. I don't know how the statute of limitations work, but I was like, oh, they got a high school here with a baseball dugout. That works for me. And with my luck, they were having some sort of community event. The parking lot's full. There's people coming in and out of cars, and there I am with my little quilt, all like, oh, hope no one sees me.
Well, Matt, really appreciate the time, man. I'm going to wind her down. Is there anything, last thoughts you want to leave us with?
I can't stress it enough. Just, give your Congress folks a call in Washington and tell them you care about public lands and wildland firefighters, because we need some fundamental changes for this to be a sustainable career. We gotta start taking care of our folks, because everyone loves firefighters. We only show up when people call us, and it's a bipartisan issue. That's my favorite thing. It's just doesn't matter what politics you're into. Folks love firefighters. So we're here to help, and just gotta make sure we have those staffing, and folks are taken care of, because that's the right thing to do for our first responders.
Absolutely, man. I'm right there with you. Well, thanks for the time, Matt. Appreciate it, and we'll have to connect again sometime down the line.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Sounds great. Thanks.
And there you have it. That is episode 82 with Matt Mason on Buffalo Roamer Outdoors. Thanks for sticking with us. Had a little bit of a technical trouble. Had to chop off a little bit at the end of this interview, but hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. I know I enjoyed talking with Matt. Don't forget, you can check out buffaloroamer.com. I got guided canoe trips for the 2024 season up out there, up on the website now, and all kinds of other stuff. If nothing else, go get some fresh air, and I'll see you downriver.